Hello, this is Kade and welcome to the next video for the Starfield Shipbuilding series. For this one I'm going to do it a little bit different. I'm going to be looking at not just one ship, not just at two ships, but at three ships, but we're also going to be looking at just one ship. What I have in front of you here is the final upgraded version of my Introvert playstyle ship. So this is a ship designed for just a single person to go around Starfield and to do whatever they need to do. So that means that we don't need a whole lot of space dedicated to habitation modules because we don't need to worry about crew slots, crew berths or anything of the like. So all that we are really worrying about is, do we have what we need for our own needs? And what do we need for our own needs? Well, crafting stations, a bed, docking module, bay, and a cockpit. All that we need, and that's all that we have. So we have a very small, nice little compact ship. But the real nice thing about this design is that it allows you to have a very clean, very simple upgrade path from an A-class ship all the way to a C-class ship. I'll show you how we get there when we take a look at what this ship looks like when we completely take it apart. But for the moment, I will say she's looking mighty fine here. So here we are then with the ship completely taken apart, and I have laid it out as usual to give you a good overview of what we have, but also how our upgrade path is going to look. Now there's one item I'm not going to look at in detail, and that's going to be the weapon systems, because those are relatively personal choice. My recommendation, if you want to know them, is to run 2 sets of particle beams and 1 set of EM weapons. You will normally use the particle beams, and then you can power on the EM weapons if you wish to do any boarding actions. But in general, particle beam weapons will just wreck anything without any issue, and they do damage to both shields and hull very effectively. So with that said, let's take first a quick look at the interior. So our interior layout is as follows. We have the bay at the back in this case. We go into our armory to display all our cool weapons. We go into a companion module, which also has our docking module. There's another companion module then located right underneath the bridge here, which is then flanked by 2 more companion modules, leading into the workshop and the science lab. And then in the front we have a living quarters, not a captain's quarters, but a living quarter. Although maybe some captain's quarters come with a galley as well. If they do, you can use one of those as well. But the goal here is to ensure we have all of our crafting stations. And with this layout, we have all the crafting stations we need, and we even have a cool place to show off our cool weapons. So the armory, in fact, is optional, because we are just running for a single person, so we don't really care about anything that we don't necessarily need. Now, what else we need is found here on the center, and that's our fuel tanks. So we're running a pair of the M50s here, and that's really all that you need, besides, of course, some landing gear. But everything else here is cosmetic items, or the landing gear, of course, or your weapon location. So how you want to design the ship around this, you're of course free to do that as you wish. If you want to know what I've put all in here, I will show you that at the end of this. But for now, let's go ahead and take a look at how we actually do the upgrading process. So we shall first put back all of our habitation, and then we take a look here at what we have. Now down here we have our A class configuration. If we go up, we go into our B class configuration, and then finally we go into our C class configuration. So for our A class, what are we running? Well, we're running 3 of the White Dwarf 1315 engines. We're running a R4000 graft drive, a toroidal reactor, the 164mm, and we flank that by a couple of the 400 cm ballast cargo hulls. And finally, for our shield, a 60S protector shield generator. Now, of course, you're going to be using what you have available, but this is roughly the configuration that you're going to be running with. Now, one of the goals we have for this ship as well is that we want to maintain a mobility rating of 75% and up. So if you're going to be using some lower end components, you may need to downgrade your cargo capacity a little bit. So adjust it as feels right, and maybe if you're fine with lower maneuverability, you can still keep up with some higher cargo. But if you have the skills and access to these modules, these are the ones that you could be using. So how will this work to slot in? Well, very simple. If we select these all, we can simply drag them and slot them straight in. And that's the nice thing about this ship design, is that these configurations are completely swappable. You don't need to redesign the ship around them. You literally take off one set and you insert the other set. So if we take out the alpha configuration again, as follows, we remove it, although this time the graph drive is not wanting to come. There we go. We remove the alpha configuration and now we can install the Bravo configuration. So for the Bravo configuration, we are adding one more of these 3015 engines. The reason is we're running a Bravo class shield generator and reactor, so we're adding additional mass to the ship. So we need additional maneuverability thrust in order to compensate. However, we kind of overcompensate, so instead of just adding the extra engine and the B-class components, we are also going to be adding a pair of the 300 cm ballast cargo holds to give us a little bit extra cargo capacity. So if we take a look at this, we just grab the components again, we take the whole set, and it slots right back into the ship. So now we went from an A-class ship to a B-class ship. Now the main advantages of going from an A to a B-class ship is that we are going to be increasing our power output because a B-class reactor will output more power. In our case, running the max grade components, we're going from an output of 29 to an output of 39 base. So that is 10 more. Now, of course, in return for that, we are using additional power for our engine and our shield. For our engine, because we're adding one more, we're using 3 more power there. And our shield, which is of course also an upgrading capacity, we're using 2 more power. So while we are gaining 10 power, we're using up an additional 5, but that still leaves us with 5 power to spare to go towards our weapon systems, for example. So overall, going from an A to a B is a straight up upgrade without any downsides. There are only upsides going from A to B. So definitely get your piloting skill up to a level where you can pilot B-class ships. It is a substantial difference to your space game experience. Now, there is of course a final upgrade path into a C-class ship. And when we're going to upgrade to a C-class ship, we will notice that we are going to make a trade-off. So first we will remove our B-class, and then of course we can go ahead and select our C-class components, which again slot straight back in. So what do we have for our C-class components? Well, first off, we're changing out our engines. We no longer have the thrust capability from our A-class engines in order to keep the maneuverability as we desired. So we need to upgrade our engines. But we're not going to a C-class engine, but we're going to stick to a B-class engine. The reason being we gain a little bit of extra speed, but we're still losing a lot because we're going from a 180 base speed for our A-class engines to a 140 base speed for our B-class engines. Now this is the extreme because these engines are specific that they are the only ones that go to 180. Most A-class engines only go to 140, so you would only lose 10 meters a second in your top speed. So that is your main downside here. You are trading off top speed for the additional capabilities that you're going to get in the form of shield generation, weapon availability, and also because we have this additional thrust available to us, we are going to be using it to add a substantial amount of extra cargo in the form of adding 2 of these Galleon S203 cargo holds, which gives us 2400 extra base cargo, which is quite the upgrade over the B-class configuration. Beyond that, of course, our shield now goes from a capacity of around 1200 to a capacity of 1600. The downside being here is that we're also increasing our power demand from 10 to 12. So we're needing additional power to get the shield operational. And our C-class reactor in this case only provides us 1 additional power over our B-class reactor. So we are going down in our power budget for other systems from 5 extra over the A-class, to just having 4 extra over the A-class. So it's still more, but there is a downside to it. So we're trading off power budget and top speed in order to gain high shield capabilities, high DPS availabilities because our C-class weapons will range far superior over anything else, and we're getting a fairly sizable chunk of extra cargo space. So the C-class upgrade is more of a balancing act, and hence it is the widest one that's somewhat optional. You don't have to go to the C-class configuration, but you can, and as you see, all of these configurations slot in on top of each other very easily. And in fact, when it comes to the B-class here, our graph drive, for example, is the same as that we also use for our A-class configuration. So all that we do to go from a A-class to a B-class is we reconfigure the engines. So going from 3 on the side here to 2 on each side. We are adding a pair of extra cargo holds. We're removing the reactor and the shield generator, and we replace them with another reactor and another shield generator. So it's a very easy switch. For the C-class, of course, we are making a little bit more of an effort, but overall it still slots in exactly the same place as our A-class and our B-class components. So if you don't like the shipbuilding design in Starfield, you only need to build the ship once. And once it's done, and all you need to do then to do your upgrades is you take off the components that need to go and you replace them with new components while keeping the base of the ship entirely identical. So that gives you then this very flexible little platform that will serve you all the way from the start of the game towards the end of the game. If you want to have a really nice start for this kind of a platform, if you do the quest line for the 3-star Rangers, at the end of it you get rewarded with a lovely little ship, which is a really good A-class reactor. In fact, that reactor is even better than what we have over here. If I recall correctly, it has an output of like 33. So that's a really, really good upgrade. If you then later on get access to these engines, even better, but even if you don't, it comes with 4 A-class engines, so this configuration. So it is a really good base to start this design with. You just of course reconfigure it as you desire, but try to keep this idea in place if you want to for an easy upgrade. So you just take out what you don't want anymore and you slot in straight back in what you want without needing to redesign your ship. So that is it then for today. A very configurable little ship, going all the way from an A-class to a C-class, designed for the solo operator. So you're running without crew, you're just doing your things on your own place. Of course, you still have place for some crew if you wanted to. So if you wanted to have like Vesco on board for some of the bonuses, you could get away with it, but you don't have a whole lot of crew stations available. And also, you only have 2 beds available in this particular configuration. Now, say you really want to have additional crew beds available, there is one upgrade you could do, and that is over on the side here. You can see we're using a couple of the Deimos hull modules. You could replace these, slide this one back or forward, and slide in a habitation module in the back here. It will be the same weight configuration class-wise, so you don't have to worry about that. The ship will maintain 75 mobility or higher, but it gives you a couple of extra crew berths on the ship itself. So if we take a look then at what we have for this design. So if you don't look interested in that, you can leave now. Design-wise then, what we have for this particular build is we're running a fairly good mix here of Nova Galactic, Deimos and Stroud Eklund. We are not running anything from HopeTech in this build. So on the top here we have a couple of the Deimos pieces. So these are just the spines and the radiators. I already pointed out the Deimos hull modules here, which we're using up to fill some empty areas in the ship, just to make sure that they're not empty looking. For the gear, we are running the Stroud Eklund ones. So these are the Acculanders, of course, port and starboard. In the front here, a couple of the Stroud caps, so they finish off the wings. All the way in the front here, 2 more of the Stroud caps, but then the center variations. They are flanked then by some Deimos wings. Behind that are some of the Deimos wing ports with the radiators in them. In this case, I have some horizontal weapon mounts here on the wings on the side here, which I use to mount some of the weapons. Your configuration will depend, of course, on what you need weapon-wise. Running some of the Nova Galactic radiators, so we've got a couple of top ones here, and you can already see below we have a couple of the other radiators over here. So we got 2 smaller ones and 2 of the larger ones. I know not everybody is a fan of all of the radiators. I really like the way they look, and especially with a ship with this sort of a color scheme, all of this like bronze color in here looks really, really good. matched with the gray, blacks and reds. Then we have the cargo holds, as we already showed, of course. Pretty much it. Like, yeah, below here, a couple more of the Deimos hull modules to fill up this place. Now, if you wanted to, you could try to put, say, for example, an engineering bay here. If you wanted that sort of a design, I'm not sure what that will do to your interior layout. So do that one at your own risk, but it could be a potential option. Now, say if you wanted to use this ship and you were going to be running more cargo capacity, you may need more landing gears. So of course you could be putting some landing gears here in the center, or you can replace these landing gears with the Nova Galactic ones. They don't fit the design lines as cleanly, but they provide you with double the landing thrust. So you need only half of the Nova Galactic landing gears than you would need of these Stroud Eklund ones. That's pretty much the entirety then of this ship. It's one of my favorite little designs. I do like, a bit of a modular sort of ship that is not too large. It works really well when you just want to get around places. And it's, very agile. This configuration, especially in the C-class, it packs a hell of a lot of firepower. Like, you could take this thing into the Crimson Fleet area, where all of the pirates are. If they're hostile to you, you can just clean up everything without needing to worry about making it out alive, because you will be making it out alive. So yeah. And yeah, that is it, and then completely in full. I hope this was another interesting build for you, and especially now we're doing something slightly different here with a fully configurable ship from A to C class. As always, if you have any feedback, well, leave it down in the comment section below. You can also join the Discord server and give me some of the suggestions or feedback over there if you prefer. And well, beyond that, thank you very much for spending your time and watching this video. I've been Kade. Till next time, goodbye.